Welcome back to the Wargaming Den. A couple more reports of my games at Southcon that were held over Queen's Birthday weekend down here in New Zealand. Game 13 is my Elves will take on Josh's Goblins, and then game 14 will be versus Justin's Nightstalkers. First up, it's the Goblins, and the mission we're playing today is Plunder. And here we go with my Elves, same list as in the last battle report: the two Palace Guard Regiment, Sea Guard Horde, Quicksilver Lancers, Silver Breeze Regiment, Dragon Riders, the Elven King, two Dragon Lords, and the two Wizards. So after a narrow loss versus Jeff, the second game up, I was up against Josh and his Goblins. Played Josh quite a bit. He's another local Oamaru gamer. He took a bit of a variation on his standard Goblin list. He was the TO for the weekend, so he brought his Goblins along as the 8th player to make sure that nobody had a bye, which was rather nice of him. So as well as running the event, he got to push a few Goblins around the table as well. So, as I said, similar to his regular Goblin force, he's got his 4 Rebel regiments, 2 Troll Hordes. He uses Chalice, Vrath, and the Det Packs and Dwarven. The Chalice and the Dwarven are to help mitigate the nerve of the Trolls. Magwan Regiment, Mincer Mob, Goblin Blaster, Mincer, Wingit, Grony, King on a Fleabag, Wizard on a Fleabag, who's the host of Shadow Beast that boosts either Grony Snark or Grup Longnail, Troll Bruiser, and Magwa Joss. So, pretty large army, really. 17 drops and lots of characters, lots of flavour to it. I always worry facing this army because there's so many things that explode in it. And so I have to be careful with the various characters, especially some of those combinations Josh can use are quite nasty. But anyway, on with the game. And here we have deployment. What can I say? There's a lot of goblins across the other side of the table there. The mission was Plunder, so there were 5 objectives scattered across roughly the center of the table. 3 of them were worth 1 point each, and this one were worth 2 points each. So they were loot tokens, so you could grab them and run off with them. And at the end of the game, the person with the most tokens would win. So when it came down to what to do, my mission was to try and snipe out the blasters or the trolls. I think it's these ones which had the detonation pack things, so they blast and damage people as well. Grony can do blast damage of some description as well, as could Grup. So there was 4 characters or units that I wanted to avoid as much as I could, and I also had to watch out for all the other nasties, including the Mincer Mob and stuff. And Josh usually uses his Rebel pretty well to gum up lines as well. So I was looking forward to this. Really wasn't sure. All I knew is I wanted to grab this objective, maybe push out that one. There's only a Rebel mob over there and my Dragon Lord, and see what would happen from there. I was a bit worried that I was going to be overwhelmed, and with all those characters and stuff, things weren't going to be easy. And we pretty much got into the action right from the get-go. Josh went first, didn't do too much to me. I think I took 3 wounds on some Palace Guard, and this is him moving his stuff in through the center. I kind of just wasn't 100% sure, but I just ended up throwing everything I could just to the right of the hill. Dracons, Stormwind, Dragon Lord, to try and roll up the units around here. Did a few wounds on the blasters, but didn't do enough damage on them to break them straight off. And this is from the end of turn 2, I think. So character and some Rebel would take on my Palace Guard over here, did 4 wounds. My Silver Breeze got really lucky against the Trolls and the Troll Bruiser. They ended up being wavered 9 wounds rather than destroyed. up here. Silver Breeze took some wounds. Sorry, the Palace Guard, as did the Stormwind after the blaster detonated, but didn't do too much damage to us. And my king is taking on one of the characters, maybe Groany, and also I think that may be Grupp Longnail there. So lots of units at the back to be engaged still. Round here, the more pups had advanced onto a token just out of sight to the over to the left here. The rebel had grabbed another objective as well, and that's is it Joss or whatever the character is, and they're the trolls. I think they're the ones with the detonation packs. So yeah, things were looking interesting. We got straight into combat on turn 1, so it was a pretty bloody and brutal game. And Josh pushed up the flank with his winglet, which is one of my favourite models in his army. I've said it before, but it's just very well painted and a very cool, flavourful unit. My wizard may look like a bit more like a fighter wizard, my theory being that he uses a shield rather than a talisman to inspire his troops. Basically, my D&D elf characters I was going to use up in Timaru at a friend's place still, and I hadn't had a chance to get up there and grab a couple of them to use in the army. And here we've got a pretty good overview of the action about the end of turn 2, or no, looks like part way into my turn 3. So the Sea Guard have charged the Maw Beasts, or whatever they're called. I've got the Goblins there, and potentially going to flank my Dragon Lord if I don't kill them. The Palace Guard are taking on some Goblins and a character there. Silver Breeze are wavered. I swung the Stormwind Cavalry through this way though, and they hit the Trolls in the flank, which ended that particular menace. And the Dragon Riders are just lining things up, and I think they're eyeing up the Mincer mob at this stage, and the Palace Guard are chewing through some characters over here. Yeah, so it was pretty full on this early in the game. And looks like the end of the turn here. So yep, the trolls have been destroyed, as of the Maw Beasts, and the general on the Drakon has turned to face the goblins, and we've cleared out the things there as well. So suddenly the field is looking a lot emptier than it was, and we've killed the characters here. So things are not looking good now for the goblins at all. And here we have just from another angle. As you can see, the goblins army has started to evaporate, really. There's not much left on table at all, whereas my army's still almost fully intact. So the goblins are really in trouble at this point of the game. And a bit of revenge for the goblins. The Mincer mob smashed into the Palace Guard and ran them over. However, that meant that, and I think they must have turned to face, I sent in a Dragon Lord to slow them down a bit. We then killed them and cleaned up the last couple of goblin units to table the goblins in a very one-sided battle, which was not the way I expected it to go at all. And there we have it, victory to the Elves. I wasn't sure about committing all my troops in that first turn the way I did. It was a bit of a gamble, but it definitely paid off, and I managed to slaughter pretty much every goblin on the table to score a comprehensive win for that one, which boosted my placings a wee bit and gave the Elves a wee bit of much needed confidence before they took on the Nightstalkers in the last game of the day. And so on to the final game of day 1. This time my Elves were going to take on Justin's Nightstalkers in the Salt the Earth mission. Never faced Nightstalkers before, so not really sure what to expect, but I'll just quickly run through Justin's list. And the final game of the first day, I was up against Justin and his Nightstalkers. Never faced a Nightstalker army, didn't really know how Mindthirst worked or anything. Just looking at it, all the units looked tough and nasty, and with their stealth, my bows weren't going to be very effective, but I was hoping my lightning bolts might be able to do a bit of damage and slow them down. I really wanted to try and avoid that legion of bloodworms if I could, and pick away at some of the easier to damage units. But a lot of the army only had defense 3 or 4, so I was hoping to be able to do some damage to them, but really not sure what to expect or how this army was going to play, as I'd never played Nightstalkers before. But let's have a look and see how we go. The mission for this game was Salt the Earth. There's a number of tokens on the board and you can burn them on your turn if you can control them, but you get points at the end of the game if you are controlling them as well. So I'm carrying on my theme with this game. I've played Jeff, Josh, and now Justin. As I said, really not sure what to expect out of these Nightstalkers. I deployed down mainly on the left hand side of the table. I wanted to try and get those Shadow Hounds if I could, and then see if I was able to turn the flanks from there. Put a little holding force with a Dragon Lord and the Silver Breeze round this way behind a hill, just to see what might eventuate there, but I wanted to advance, if at all, only slowly, and try and control these objectives and go for that one and see what developed from there. Really not sure what to expect. I really did want to try and avoid those bloodworms though, a legion of those with 40 attacks. Yeah, no, I want to stay well out of their way as much as I can. And just a close-up of some of Justin's army. Used a wide range of models from different manufacturers for his army, and it looks pretty cool. And the Legion of Bloodworms. Not sure where the figures came from, but they are pretty cool. Pretty easy to paint up, just a wash over some base colours, but they look really cool. Justin was losing the odd worm over the course of the weekend though, and there's a few less on the base than there were at the start of the weekend. And the last couple of units, his Soul Flayers and his Reapers that are out on his left flank. And here we go, bit of the action on turn 1. So the Night Stalkers moved forward en masse. I pretty much stayed where I was with the bulk of my infantry. Tried to move around here with Dragon Lord, the Quicksilver Lancers and the Dragon Riders. My aim was, as I said, was to try and get these Shadow Hounds as quickly as I could and try and turn the lines if I could. Justin only had 10 units, so I was hoping to be able to use my mobility to make things difficult for him. And on my other flank, my Silver Breeze and Dragon Lord advanced up to the hill. My plan was to try and get the Dragon Lord in behind here somewhere, and the Silver Breeze just to start sniping and hopefully chipping away at these Soul Flayers or something. Turns out that this little force here became quite a distraction and ended up drawing the bloodworms this way as well, which I was more than happy with because it kept the bloodworms away from the bulk of my army, which is down this direction. Justin's turn too. As you can see, his horrors and things and butchers kept advancing. He threw the Shadow Hounds into the Draken Riders. They were hindered, so didn't do too much damage, and I was able to take care of them. But some tough units are starting to head towards my Palace Guard and Sea Guard as well. And a close-up view of the Palace Guard taking on the Butchers. Very cool models, I like those. And here we go, a shot, maybe the end of turn 3, I've taken care of the Shadow Hounds. Both of the Palace Guard units are engaged. I think that might be the Terror or the Horror. The other one's up against the Butchers. The Stormwind have raced around the flank here. As you can see, the Bloodworms are coming over towards my Silver Breeze, who have decided to move this way, and the Soulflowers are now over here. There may have been something over there, I can't quite remember, and the Dragon Lord is over here as well. So yeah, I was happy with the Bloodworms coming this way. And another close-up of the action in about turn 3 here. Yeah, I like the new battle mat that Josh has just brought as well. Looks very effective. But the Palace Guards seem to be holding their own at present, which is good. And I've now seen off the Butchers. I've lost one unit of Palace Guard, but the other one is engaged with the Terror or Horror. And there's a Planar Apparition just in front of my Stormwind Cavalry here. Grabbed an objective over here as well. The other Dragon Lord and King are taking on the other Planar Apparition. So I've managed to kill a few units. Most of my army is still intact, so things are looking pretty good from the Elves' point of view. And here we have another shot, maybe turn 4. So I'm blocking with my cavalry and my Dragon Riders. The Palace Guard are still fighting the horrors and things up here. My King and a Dragon Rider is fighting an apparition. The Bloodworms have finally seen the error of their ways and are now starting to slurp back towards where the objectives are, while my Silver Breeze have just been dancing around the Soulflowers, trying to avoid them as much as they can. And just another close-up of the Horror, I think it is, and one of the Planar Apparitions. Things are starting to look a wee bit dicier for me now that the Bloodworms are heading over towards where my main units are, and they've still got the Reapers here. The Apparition, it's been healing up stuff, I think. So always good to sacrifice a king for the greater good. His job was to slow the Bloodworms down a wee bit, if he could. Once I get a bit of momentum going, these Bloodworms are pretty hard to slow down. They've now just slurped over one of the objectives. And at the end of turn 6, so the Bloodworms have taken an objective here. The Reapers over here have a second objective. That's the smaller character, I can't remember what it's called in the Nightstalker list. I've got the Dracons, I've got the Stormwind, Silver Breeze around somewhere. I've still got the Sea Guard as well. So I ended up controlling an objective up here. The Sea Guard had another 2, and I may have had one more. It was either 3-2 or 4-2 in the end, but it was a good game. If the Bloodworms hadn't have been lured down this way early on and had gone towards the main part of my army, I think it might have been a very different result. But it was a really good game. It was an army I hadn't fought before and was really not sure how I was going to cope with it. So very happy with that. And there we have it, another victory to the Elves. So very happy to have come back to have 2 wins and 1 loss on day 1. There was about 4 of us had 2 wins and a loss, and Mark had managed to get 3 wins, so he was in the lead. I was in second, just purely the result of a couple of big wins that I had there. We were using the Northern Kings scoring method, so you got points for winning, you got points for killing units, and you got points for taking objectives. So even though there was about 3, maybe 4 of us tied on second with 2 wins. I was just ahead of a couple of the others, just purely based on how many things I'd killed in those last couple of games. So really happy with the way things had gone on day one. I was starting to use the mobility of the Elves reasonably well. Still definitely got my training wheels on and making quite a few mistakes with them, and they're not a very forgiving army. When the wheels do fall off, they fall off rapidly. Most of the units are only defense 4, so can't take too much punishment. Very different to the ogres that I'm used to dealing with, where those siege breakers and many that I usually take are able to take a heck of a lot of punishment. The elves definitely can't. So it's been a bit of a challenge to use them at times, but thoroughly enjoyed trying to learn how to get the most out of them. So it's been lots of fun, and I look forward to day 2.